Well, howdy, everybody. I love that little jingle thing. That's fantastic. It kind of gets me going, gets me set up, gets me in the moment here for Beyond the Hot Seat. Hello, everybody. We'll give the folks a minute to jump into the chat and settle in, get your popcorn ready. Got a great On the Hot Seat with you today. And by the way, this is On the Hot Seat, FootballDiehards.com YouTube channel. Appreciate y'all showing up. Those of you who are, like most of you here, are subscribed. But if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, do all those YouTube-y things. Hit the like button. Like the like button. If you don't like me, hit the dislike button. I'm fine with that. I, being Bob Harris, you know me from the FootballDiehards.com website, Football Diehards magazines, the Pro Forecast, Football Diehards, cheat sheets, draft book, etc. We'll be working on some of that here pretty soon. Also, you know me from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Hello, Charles. Thanks for coming in. Hello, Golf Boy. Well, saying hi to Bud. We're going to probably have to hear about some of Mike's golf, I'm guessing, because we have a guest, and he's fantastic. Someone I've been working with a very long time, and you hear us together on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio on the Football Diehards program on the regular. I'm going to bring him on now. His name is Mike Dempsey. This is like, I want to say how many years, this is our 20th year of working. 20th. It's been, like, how long has it been? Like 20? Are we closing
overall, probably crossing paths for about 20. I think probably about 18 or 19 working together as a, in-season, once-a-week fantasy guest. Or you originated in our connection on my local Jacksonville, Florida radio show. And over a decade now on SiriusXM as the dynamic duo of Football Diehards. By the way, I hear you have a website, you're telling me? I listened in the intro. There's a
FootballDiehards.com. It's fantastic. Everyone should go there. And if you haven't signed up yet, use the early bird discount. Its promo code is Diehards. Get 15% off. And there's a ton of content up there available right now, including all John Lobb's rookie content, including sleepers and all kinds of fun stuff as well. Also, nice article by Tara Roberts, who will be here Saturday with me. A little best ball article there. So, and hello, everybody. Hello, Andrea. Hello, Dame. Appreciate everyone coming. Hello, Joe, Troy. Nice of everyone to come. If you have questions, I see the JSC. You have questions already. We'll get to them in a few moments. So bear with us as we go through a few things. Because I did, so Mike Dempsey, if any of you don't know, besides being my co-host on the Football Diehards radio program, he's actually the host and I'm like the co-host. But we're going to be co-host for right now. He's the host of Jaguars Today on 1010XL in Jacksonville, has been for 1,000 years doing that. The co-host of the Jaguars Radio, the game day show. So he knows a little bit of something about the Jaguars. So why don't we start there, Mike? And just because I think a lot of us feel like the Jaguars are a offense in ascent. Clearly they are, but there are some new pieces coming in. Just lay the groundwork here. Let's start with the receiving core. What do we expect for, especially Christian Kirk with Calvin Ridley showing up?
I think you have to expect them to share it, Bob. Calvin Ridley just happened to have kind of an introductory press conference today, with the all-season workouts going on. He and Trevor Lawrence were among a trio of Jaguars to talk. And, he had said, hey, me plus Trevor Lawrence equals 1,400-yard seasons, things like that. He kind of clarified that a little bit today. He said, look, I feel like I'm a 1,400-yard type receiver. And obviously, there are going to be weeks where I'm the primary. There are going to be weeks when Christian Kirk gets his, or Evan Ingram, or Zay Jones. But those are names now that have shown that they have clicked in this Trevor Lawrence-led passing game. So I got to believe there's got to be a little bit of a step back for Christian Kirk overall. Maybe not a massive one. I think what happens is Calvin Ridley comes in, he takes everything that Marvin Jones Jr. had in the passing game last year. That's to start. But it's not like it's a zero-sum game. It's not like if you give Ridley another 200 yards, they have to come from somewhere else. Trevor Lawrence is allowed to improve here in year 3, and I think that's the big thing. He can take that step up to where he's a 4,600-yard passer, somewhere in that range, and that's where Ridley's biggest impact is going to come. I just think there are going to be weeks when, if you're drafting Christian Kirk to be an every-week play, you're probably going to be disappointed at times. That's just the way it's going to go. He was a tremendous value last year. It's going a lot higher this time around, and if I'm choosing between the two, I'm going to take a shot on Ridley because he's shown more of that high-end upside in his NFL career to this point. But yeah, you're right. I think Trevor Lawrence has a lot of nice weapons around him, provided they get Evan Ingram in either under the franchise tag or a long-term deal. With Travis Etienne out of the backfield, Lawrence could easily post the top 5, 6, 7 quarterback finishes here.
Right, and that's right about where he's going in current best ball. You and I are in some best balls, people. You'll be surprised to learn. Like Mike and I are doing about, I want to say we're over 20 that we are both in. You're in like another 3,000 beyond that. Am I correct? Is it 3 or have you hit 4,000 yet?
No, it's honestly, it's over 80 so far this year. And I've got very few dwindling out there right now because not every platform allows you to just continue unimpeded through the NFL draft. For instance, Underdog shortens their clock up. Right. If you draft, you either draft before the draft or after the draft with Underdog. And I get that, right? So they've shortened their clock up for the ones that are lingering to get done over at bestball10s at fanball.com. That just continues apace. But I've reached the point now where we're close enough to the NFL draft. I'm willing to wait to see where some of these rookies come in. I haven't been taking many stabs, to be honest, at this rookie class. But, yeah, 80 plus, I will definitely have more than I did last year. I may already be there, honestly, on best balls. But my all-time high is about 160. So we'll see if I get there this summer.
Hello, Albert. Thanks for coming. The JSC saying he could see taking Calvin Ridley in round 3. Mike, I think we're seeing him right now. I'm just looking at the best ball from the last 2 weeks at Best Ball 10s, the ADP. Ridley, wide receiver 20. I think that's not an unfair price. And you're seeing Christian Kirk going a fair amount after that. And I think I'm with you. It's enough of a value right now on Ridley that I'm still buying. But if he goes up, if we get a lot more separation there, will you be more interested in Kirk, who is right now, I want to say he is about wide receiver 32.
Yeah, if we get more separation, and that means that Kirk is drifting back a little bit in ADP, yes, because my feelings about Kirk haven't changed. I think he's a viable wide receiver 3 for your fantasy team this year in a 12-team league. For me personally, Bob, having played as many leagues as I have or drafts as I've done already, Calvin Ridley in the 3rd's rich for my blood. Like, I can get him enough times in the 4th round, occasionally into the 5th, that there's no point to me in myself taking him in the 3rd. And that's the difference between, are you doing 3, 4, 5 drafts, or are you doing 50-plus drafts? And if you're doing 3, 4, 5, you got to have the courage of your convictions. And if you feel Ridley is the 3rd rounder, that's fine. It's just been my experience that I'm getting more reasonably priced shares of him. So when he goes early, I'm okay. I'll pivot to somebody else, and all that's going to do is push a few other players down to me.
Yeah, I think the price is going to rise on Ridley as, the buzz increases, workouts begin. And Trevor Lawrence right now, quarterback 7. Are you comfortable with that? Some of the players going after him, Lamar Jackson, I think is a notable. We'll maybe get into that a little bit. It's been kind of beat to death. But Deshaun Watson, sure. Dak Prescott, Tua, Kirk Cousins, et cetera, going after that. Are you comfortable with Lawrence at 7?
I am. And yeah, I think you can make an argument at times. Could he be 6? And I've taken him over Justin Herbert at times. Some of that is when you look at the board and you say, well, if I take him here, I'm liable to get Ridley with my next pick, for instance. I do like to get those hookups in best ball leagues. But, yeah, I think he's going at the right spot. Like, when he comes off the board, I feel like – and I will take him ahead of Lamar Jackson. I'm just simply not drafting Lamar right now. There are plenty of fish in the sea. I don't see Lamar's ADP climbing that greatly. Like, if we knew he signed long-term tomorrow, Bob, he's still got Odell Beckham Jr. coming off a torn ACL as his top receiving option. It's not a great circumstance. He still has the injury concern. So I think he is being priced appropriately as if he's going to play. So why take the risk that he might not play the entire season? Because once he shows up, I don't think you're going to have to reach much further than you're getting him in drafts right now in order to get your shares of Lamar Jackson.
Royal Slade asking if we feel like Ridley is a concern after missing 2 years. I'm not that worried about it. I think he'll pick it back up. And also, the JSC wondering if the Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley stack or Kirk and Ridley stacks better. I'm probably going with the quarterback and one of those receivers, the one I can get, as long as it's organic. We talk about this a lot, Mike. You don't want to overpay. I think you mentioned it just now. If it comes to me naturally, I would take that. I would go ahead and grab Ridley and get Lawrence where I want to get him. Are you looking for either of those? Are you looking for anything maybe getting Ingram a little later?
I have, but you're not getting clearly as late as you got him last year, right? And right. You do have a little bit of that concern with Evan Ingram as well, Bob. He wants a long-term deal. The draft is coming up. They have not agreed on terms yet. Evan Ingram could be a guy who holds out for a while. Trevor Lawrence did address that today, though, and said, look, he looks fantastic. You're not going to have to worry about Evan Ingram just kind of coasting throughout the summer and showing up just to collect his money, because even if he does that, signs a franchise tender, he's auditioning for the NFL again this year. So, look, when you get to best ball, I just think the idea of the stack is pretty appealing, right? Because you hit those big weeks and you're trying to get those peak performances, right? And if the passing game stinks that week, well, you got other people to step in automatically and pick you up. I don't go for it as much in a typical redraft league, but I've stacked Trevor Lawrence with Ridley and Ingram. I've stacked him with Kirk and Ingram. I haven't done the Ridley-Kirk combination. I think that's a little bit over the top. I probably have a team or two that has ETN and Lawrence on there as well, though not getting as much ETN. I feel like he's a little pricey in the first half of round 3 in a lot of drafts.
I agree. I'm not that keen. I guess I wasn't impressed with the opportunity. Maybe I should be more impressed with him, and maybe I will become more so after the draft. And I think that this is all the move they made, which the primary move was adding one piece, right? To that.
Dearness Johnson. Right.
Right. And look, we've seen him capable. He's flashed at times at Cleveland. I remember him coming in and getting the occasional start of one in particular against Denver where he tore him up a couple of years ago, but haven't seen him do much since then. So I'll wait and see on that one. Number of people, Ridley just went. Golf Boy says Ridley went 22 at 502, and he just completed FFPC $33 best ball. I think that sounds about right where I'm seeing it go right now. And so look for that price right now, but don't be surprised if it rises. And say hello to everybody who's coming in, Mr. Scampers, Robert. We'll get to the questions here. Appreciate you. So let's jump into a couple other things, Mike, newsy-wise, because you and I have not. This is like as long as we've gone. You took the week off.
Like golf. 10 days, right?
Right. This is the longest we haven't talked football in a while. So there have been a few developments, one of which was I guess, it kind of came as a surprise, the timing-wise, but not a surprise that they did it. The Philadelphia Eagles, get an extension done with Jalen Hurts. It seems like the sooner you get this done, the better off you're going to be. These quarterbacks aren't getting any cheaper. Just your thoughts on the fantasy implications of Jalen Hurts, getting a new deal, the moves that the Eagles are making around him. Do you think it's... So I guess the big thing is you get these quarterbacks on that rookie contract, the teams are able to build around them and put all this super talent around them. Once they spend the big money, maybe that gets a little more difficult. I don't have any concerns about this offense right now. Seems like all the pieces are in place that we'd like to be in place, and maybe more to come. How do you feel about Hurts going into the season?
It may be a concern if they hadn't already surrounded him with all that talent, right? I mean, you got the key pieces coming back. You've got A.J. Brown, and you got Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, and those are the key ones. And right now with Miles Sanders gone, we just don't know what the plan is going to be in the backfield. We see the speculation. Maybe they'll go Bijan Robinson. I saw one proposal today where they trade for Austin Eckler. I mean, all things are possible here. I think if you get a Bijan Robinson type who can handle as big a workload as you hand him, I think there may be a little bit of a concern off the top with Jalen Hurts running for as many scores as he did last year, but I think his passing game numbers can increase. Off the top of my head in 15 games, I want to say 22 passing touchdowns for him last year. So I think that number can rise a little bit. I find he is going at times as the first quarterback off the board in your fantasy league, and I think it's justifiable. Right. And I think as long as you're seeing the top three of Hurts, Mahomes, and Allen in whichever order you want to put them, I'm getting shares of all those guys when I do go quarterback early. I'm also punting on quarterback early in some leagues as well. There's a little bit of a mix. There's less of a stigma going early, as you know, Bob, on quarterback this year, and it doesn't put you behind nearly as much because, by the end of round 6, probably 7 or 8 teams have already done the same thing, and several of them going very early, including Jalen Hurts I've seen oftentimes in the second round of drafts. And I've done the Hurts, Devontae Smith, end of the second, beginning of the third hookup from time to time in best ball this year.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all three of those quarterbacks going off, and kind of after we run through them, I'm going to give you a chance to kind of assess them as a group. But the JSC had a question related to the Eagles. He wants to know if we think Rashad Penny will smash. we have talked to people. Chris Franklin from NJ.com kind of gave us, a little bit of an enthusiastic endorsement of Penny, depending on the draft. How do you feel about Rashad Penny?
That's the big caveat, right? I mean, look, if the draft were held and the Eagles don't draft anyone of consequence early, I think Rashad Penny is a beautiful flyer in a best ball type scenario. I wouldn't want to build my backfield around him. I wouldn't even want to have to count on him as my RB3, because even when you had Miles Sanders there, who was younger, healthier generally than Rashad Penny, there were times when they just ignored him, right? And so it would be a Kenneth Gainwell week or a Boston Scott week. I think that is still in play. Now, if the Eagles go with a Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs or some early investment in the draft, I think that'll change, but that'll obviously hurt Penny and all those other running backs I just mentioned. But right now, I've got him as a flyer, no higher than an RB4, though, in any of the best balls where I've drafted him.
Yeah, the JSC wandering around, 7 or 8. I think that's a little early for me. I'd like to wait a little longer, but also feel like in best ball, and this is something, kind of a strategy. Let's say you invest in Breece Hall and feel like maybe you've overpaid, or a running back you feel, or Javonte Williams, somebody you feel won't be ready early in the season. Maybe you grab a guy like Penny who might last some period of time and have a role early on. But the draft is going to be a big issue for him, and we'll see how that goes. So any other questions there? No. So we'll move on. Josh Allen talked last night a little bit about the need to evolve. Apparently, he's heard some of the talk. He was hit like 200, and I want to say 200, close to 250 times last year. The percent of running plays he was hit on, of his running plays, is like 60+%, where like Patrick Mahomes is down in like the 30% of the plays he runs on, right? So, Sean McDermott has made a big point of this. Let's say he does evolve a little bit. Can he pick up the slack with his passing? Is there room for growth there? We've heard some rumors. DeAndre Hopkins would love to be there. I would love for him to be there as well. Stephon Diggs not showing up for the offseason program, but doesn't seem to be a huge concern. Josh Allen, though, his ability to evolve into a higher-end passer than we've seen, is there any ceiling there, or is there any room for growth there?
I think there is some room for growth there, but I think the downside, I don't know if you can make up for the downside if he's running less, if he's scoring fewer rushing touchdowns. And we'll see. Like, this is the first we're hearing this from Josh Allen. I'm sure it's been a discussion with inside, the Bills organization. But I don't know if we're quite there yet with Josh Allen. I mean, I think this is going to be something to watch in future seasons. But I still feel like this is a team that's a little bit desperate right now, Bob, right? They were, in many people's eyes, the favorites to win the Super Bowl last year and didn't really come close to getting there. Josh Allen down the stretch, if he's battling for playoff seeding, you think he's not going to tuck it and run? I'm not really concerned about it this year that much. But it is something, in a dynasty setting where, that I do believe if Josh Allen gets a DeAndre Hopkins, yes, he can throw for more yards, a few more touchdowns. I don't think it will make him the fantasy force that he has been, where, he was as good a bet as anybody in any given year to be the number one fantasy quarterback. I think this would put him in a wider pool of guys. Right now, I think he's still in that elite tier that we talked about that is really only occupied by Mahomes, Hurts, and Allen at the moment. But I'm not overly worried about it. Would like to see Stephon Diggs, just show up and get with the program here, because in the back of your mind, Bob, there's got to be some wonder. Does he try to force his way out of Buffalo just to get more money? Is this guy ever going to be satisfied with anything? But I think when the dust settles this year, we'll get one more year of the usage and expected production, provided he stays healthy, out of Josh Allen.
Yeah, if you did not hear the part I mentioned about DeAndre Hopkins, he has told Von Miller apparently that he would like to be Bill. He said the Bills are one of his top destinations, so we'll see how that plays out. I don't know. A couple of quick questions I'm going to get in here, and one I'm going to answer for Joe Aber. Is Antonio Brown a thing, or is that story is written? He is not a thing. Well, he is a thing, but he is no longer a football thing. He's going to continue.
Oh, he's something.
He's something. If both Ridley and Brandon Ayuk available to you, Mike, in the 4th round, is it an easy call?
Oh, it's a simple call. I wouldn't touch Ayuk in the 4th round, and you don't have to. Like that. That's been my experience. You can get Ayuk maybe a couple of rounds later. There's often you reach a point where, or I have at least, where I like I look at the balance of my roster and I say, all right, I'm not happy with the lack of wide receivers here. I need to get my wide receiver 3, and I've got Ayuk in the 6th or 7th. That's not happening with Ridley. So if you like these guys kind of equally, then I would just say look at another player or look at another position in the late 4th, early 5th, and wait until the 6th round. And if you're in enough drafts, you'll get Ayuk in the 6th round. It's about just the way that quarterback position is. Who's going to be the guy? Who is he going to lean on? We have no idea at this point when Brock Purdy's going to be ready to go. Are they going to get rid of Trey Lance? If they don't get rid of Trey Lance, who is he going to favor in this passing game? Sam Darnold's a total wild card. Way too much risk or questions there for me to invest the same level of draft capital on Ayuk as Ridley.
So maybe we'll talk about this if we have time, but there are players that I'm kind of avoiding at this point just due to the, I don't have enough clarity, right? And I mean, I'll gamble on some things, and you can do that when you're in a lot of best balls, but there are some things that I don't really feel like gambling on. I'll take a wait and see approach. Clarity will come. I'll be drafting plenty right up through the start of the season. One more of the top 3 quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes says his ankle's not 100%. I'm not worried about that. The Chiefs just added Richie James to that illustrious receiving core. Does it matter who his wide receivers are? Is Patrick Mahomes receiver proof?
I'm going to say yes. I mean, after last year, I think the proof is out there. I know they brought in guys, but it wasn't like MVS and Juju were tearing it up on a weekly basis. And you look up and Patrick Mahomes throws for 1 billion yards and all these touchdowns, and he's as dangerous as any quarterback in fantasy out there. So yeah, I do. If I'm investing in one this year, I'm trying to get a few shares of Kadarius Toney, but people are taking, and I've gotten a few much later shares of Sky Moore as well here. MVS is like a wide receiver 7, which he was oftentimes last year, but he's still that, which goes to show you that nobody was really impressed with what they saw. But in a best ball scenario, that's one thing. In a redraft scenario, I might roster Kadarius Toney, but I wouldn't count on him to be an every week starter. But yeah, I do think you're right. I mean, we throw that X proof around, wide receiver proof, whatever, coach proof, scheme proof. I think Mahomes is proven. Right, exactly. That's the only thing. He is the quarterback, so he didn't need to worry about that. But as long as Kelsey is drawing breath and the offensive line is reasonably proficient, then yeah, I think Patrick Mahomes is fine. And honestly, maybe the safest quarterback in the top 3 this year because he's done it without a great supporting cast. And that cast may only get better after next week's NFL draft.
So you bring up a good point. Let's do a confidence check on those top 3. As you mentioned, I mean, you're seeing all those top 3. It's Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, mostly in that order. Josh Allen, I think right now Josh Allen's ADP is on Best Ball 10s is 11. I think he's moved right up the ranks there a little bit. Confidence level in Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts delivering value at their prices.
Delivering value at their prices. Wow. I think not high, to be honest with you. In redraft, I'm probably not going down that road where they're coming off ADP-wise right now. But I'll admit the allure of the hookup has me at times. If I take Stephon Diggs 9th or 10th, I've come back and taken Allen on occasion. If you take Travis Kelce early and you can get Mahomes late in the 2nd round, you look up and you're like, I don't have a receiver or a running back, but you're like, I may have the best player at each of those other spots, right? And so I think I'm confident that they're going in the right spot amongst the quarterbacks. But in the end, outside of best ball, I think 2nd round, and I understand you pointed out Allen's ADP is in round 1 right now. I just think there's still a lot of folks out there. You can still get by with a Kirk Cousins, or a Dak Prescott, or if Deshaun Watson bounces back, there are a lot of good options that you don't have to wait to outside the top 10 or 12 necessarily. But I'm in enough drafts that I'm willing to take the chance on those guys at that price occasionally, but I would not want to make that my regular pattern.
I think that is the way to do it. And I think our most recent best ball, the one I started Saturday, was I think I did Kelsey, Mahomes, and came back around, got Josh Jacobs. And now my wide receiver 1 is Amari Cooper. So counting on that Deshaun Watson rebound there. Quick question. Brian Larkin has a Buffalo question. If Allen scales back his running, which running back would you want inside the 5? James Cook or Damian Harris?
I'd say Damian Harris, just, size-wise right now. But again, we are 8 days out from this whole thing potentially changing drastically, right?
Yes.
You see Bijan Robinson frequently mocked to Buffalo, for instance. So I'd be a little bit careful. The good thing is the price on Damian Harris is in the double-digit rounds right now. He's almost an afterthought. And it's kind of odd, Bob, because if they don't invest heavily in running back in the draft, is he any worse off than Devin Singletary was, who was going several rounds earlier last year? So I think Harris is the better value overall. I understand why people prefer Cook, and if they're betting on one guy to score more fantasy points, I'd probably go that route as well. But the specter of Allen, being that goal line back himself, and the fact that we are a week out from the NFL draft and the whole dynamic of the room can change, I'm okay if I'm getting Damian Harris in the 11th round right now, and that you kind of can oftentimes. But outside of that, I'm really not drafting Buffalo Bills running backs right now.
This is an insider tip. Never bet against Harris's. Just don't do it. It's not wise. And hello, John Bonneville. Thanks for coming. Yes, can't believe you almost missed the Dempsey episode. It is the Dream Team in the flesh. He's Mike Dempsey. You might be familiar with him from the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio program called Football Diehards, where I also often am heard as well. And if, again, you're just like stumbling across this on the YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Do all the things. Hit the like button. We love the like button and the dislike button. I'm hitting the dislike button now because somebody has to. There we go. Let's dive in further. By the way, if you're looking for more information, go to footballdiehards.com. The website, use the promo code diehards to get a 15% discount. If you haven't followed Mike Dempsey on Twitter, what are you doing? It's at MD_1010XL. I'm at Football Diehard. You guys all know this. So, but if you don't, go out there and do that stuff. All the stuff that you're supposed to do. The algorithms. Please the algorithm gods. All right. So I want to do some kind of quick hitting things here and just get your quick impressions on some things. We're about halfway through the program, people. We got plenty of time. So if you have more questions, pile them into the chat. I'll work them into the conversation. Deshaun Watson, you mentioned. There's optimism, right? He said it's like night and day. And why wouldn't it be? Of course it's night and day. So go ahead and give your basic assessment of what you expect for this offense with Deshaun Watson maybe playing better.
I don't think you give him $200+ million guaranteed and tell him to take the air out of the football. So I do think they'll throw a little bit more. They've talked about that. I think the weapons are decent with Elijah Moore, basically like a freebie coming in there. I got plenty of Amari Cooper, generally in the 4th round with Amari Cooper. And once I get past like Trevor Lawrence, I probably wait a couple of rounds, and sometimes Watson's there. Sometimes Dak is the best, but those are kind of the guys you're deciding between. And I've taken my shots on Deshaun Watson. He should still have that mobility. I mean, it's not like he died, right? I mean, he'd been away from the game, but here we are talking about Calvin Ridley. He's been away from the game as well. And I'm sure there's a little bit of rust to knock off, but at least Deshaun got to do some of that last year. And as you talked about or mentioned, he said it's like night and day. Let's not forget, his last full season, he led the league in passing yards. And I think his weapons here collectively, with Donovan Peoples-Jones in the mix, David Njoku, and they can rely on a good running game that is a threat, and his own legs as well. I think he's fairly priced right now in the last third of the QB1s on wherever you're drafting, whether it's redraft or best ball right now. So, look, I understand if you got qualms about drafting Deshaun Watson. We can all manage our teams how we like, but just putting all the off-the-field stuff aside, the numbers, I think, will bear out a top 10 fantasy quarterback for sure this year, barring he doesn't get hurt.
We had talked to a local observer who kind of was of the opinion maybe Elijah Moore is the piece to get ahead of Donovan Peoples-Jones. Are you buying that one?
I think that's certainly plausible. I mean, I think if you would have said before last year, hey, they acquired Elijah Moore, we would have been going guns blazing after him as opposed to Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think what Donovan Peoples-Jones is a nice player, right? And he's a guy that, with the right volume, can help you out on occasion. Not a guy you want to have to start every week. Right now, I don't think Elijah Moore is that guy either. Right. If I went into the season, not all on the same team, but I could live with Watson as my starter. I can live with Chubb as my RB1. Even though I'm not a big Nick Chubb guy, as you know, I just hasn't historically been used enough in the passing game for me, and I play more PPR than anything. I can go in with Amari Cooper, preferably as my wide receiver too, and that's generally where you can get him. And I've got, and Njoku, if I'm really waiting on tight end, and in best ball, I have like that pool of Njoku, Cole Kmet, Dawson Knox. I'm getting a ton of Hayden Hurst, those kind of guys. I've got a mishmash of them, right? But if that was my number one tight end, that just means I waited on the position. Hopefully I have a strong roster elsewhere. I would not want to have to rely on Elijah Moore, but I do like his talent. And, I think the price is right. You can get him pretty cheaply right now. So I have no problem taking that shot. And I think ADP probably reflects that more people are taking chances on Moore than they are on Donovan Peoples-Jones.
John Bonneville says if Watson can make David Bell a thing, he'll be close to forgiving him. There we go. So let's move on. Allen Robinson passed his physical today, according to Diana Rossini of ESPN. So sounds like this deal sending Allen Robinson to the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to get done. I find myself taking Kenny Pickett a lot as like a third quarterback, a guy who certainly has the job security I'm looking for in that spot, but maybe a little bit of upside. Where are we investing our fantasy resources in the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Najee still sneaks into the fourth round, which, again, there's no reason, unless you're only playing one league and that's your conviction, to take him any earlier than the mid-third. He's very frequently, more often than not, available in the late third round. In fact, I passed him up in the late third in a best ball. It might be the one you started the other night, as a matter of fact, and took Tony Pollard there and came around and got Najee in the early fourth, and he was sitting there highest in my queue. So that's the range where I'm taking him. It's more as my RB2. Now, if you go late first round and you go high-end wide receiver in rounds 1 and 2, Najee might be the best available. Has been in a few of my leagues. So he is my RB1 on occasion. Not preferable, but understandable depending on how you build it. I find myself taking George Pickens more. Again, I'm drafting best ball now. And I think Pickens' weekly upside, I mean, we saw the downside of Johnson, but didn't score last year, right? And Pickens is a guy that maybe he has 4 or 5 big games, and then he has 3 or 4 other useful games. I'd almost prefer in that format, get all your points in half your games. Give me zeros in the rest, because you're not going to count against me. I'm going to fill that spot with somebody else. So I'm taking Pickens as a wide receiver 3. Love him as a wide receiver 4 in best ball. I've taken Deontay Johnson on occasion when I've really built heavy running back, maybe taking that early shot on Kelsey or a quarterback, and it's a little bit by default. I still think he'll get a lot of targets. To me, Allen Robinson is almost negligible here. They moved 17 spots in the 7th round. The Rams are paying more than 2/3 of the salary. This is a pure flyer with little downside for Pittsburgh. I don't think there's really any fantasy upside. Freiermuth is in. I should have mentioned him in that Njoku level guy for me at tight end. Right. If you wait and you end up with him as your number 1, okay, fine. I'm probably not at that big of a disadvantage to half the league at least. So, and I'm not, Kenny Pickett is the third quarterback, sure. He's not lasting long enough in the drafts I'm in to get him as the third quarterback, but that's where I'd be comfortable with him. I suppose because of job security, you could get away with him as your second quarterback, particularly if you go that Mahomes, Hurts, Allen level early, maybe Joe Burrow, and you don't want to invest in a second one in round 9 or 10. Right. You could wait a little longer on Kenny Pickett.
So circling back around to Cleveland, Brian Larkin would like to know what team is a good landing spot for Kareem Hunt. And right now, is he worth a flyer, a very late round flyer in drafts just based on his abilities, which we haven't seen much of for a little while?
No, we haven't. And the word was that Cleveland felt like he lost his speed last year. Now, if you're asking what's a good landing spot, I mean, where can he get touches? Well, I think he's going to have to wait until after the draft to see how that settles out. For instance, he could, let's say Philly's not in position. They don't want to take Bijan at 10. He's off the board at 31. They go some other directions. If he were to end up in Philadelphia, he'd certainly be worth a best ball flyer there for sure. He hangs around forever. I've got a few shares of him. I've got a few shares of Leonard Fournette. I feel like they're in kind of the same camp right there. Like if you went to a Miami, and granted they brought back a bunch of guys, but they're all not that high end, right? So honestly, I think chances are, if you're drafting Kareem Hunt this year, or if you have drafted him, you're not going to get much impact out of him. But the one thing that could change that is a team missing out on the right value in the NFL draft, or an injury happening in offseason workouts into training camp and him landing in the right spot. But right now, Bob, I haven't heard a single team even showing any interest in Kareem Hunt or Fournette, really that much for that matter. So I've been mostly avoiding those guys.
For that matter.
Right. At least you hear, like Dak Prescott would like to have Zeke back. There's nobody even to stump for these other guys, right? It's not like Deshaun Watson played with Kareem Hunt much. It's not like Baker Mayfield is going to go, I need Leonard Fournette in this backfield, right? He needs to worry about beating out Kyle Trask right now.
Right. And so one of the destinations I'd heard for Kareem Hunt was the Chargers, and assuming Austin Eckler's still there is kind of the secondary piece that they've been lacking. Maybe a better landing spot if they trade Eckler, but that's been...
it'd be an unbelievable one, right? I mean, if they traded Eckler and brought in Hunt, well, then here we go. But, now we're playing a little bit of fantasy land with our fantasy football roster.
We're total fantasy land. You didn't mention it. John Bonneville wants to know, we did talk about, how the Jags will handle their backfield. Do you think they'll draft somebody to pair with ETN? Is that a possibility? Have you heard anything along those lines?
Well, I mean, they've spent several of their top 30 visits on running backs. So, yes, I think it's a possibility. Now, am I counting on that? No. I could see a scenario. Like, I personally would be comfortable if their depth chart was ETN, Dearness Johnson, JaMychal Hasty. All right, I think that's enough because keep in mind, they drafted Snoop Connor, who's a complete nothing, productivity-wise, barely touched the ball last year, barely had any snaps. So I wouldn't expect him to be active on game day. There is a scenario, though, Bob, because they have met with guys like Kendre Miller, for instance, okay, where they look at Dearness Johnson potentially as a core special teamer. He does play all 4 core special teams in terms of kickoff coverage and returns, punt coverage and returns. So there could be some of that with a sprinkling in. They have looked at it. And look, the one thing about ETN is he's got to learn how to get small. He takes a lot of big hits. He exposes his body to a lot of punishment. Right. So I absolutely could see them bringing in a guy. Now, I think, unless they go the Bijan route or something like that, I don't think it's going to be an even split. And I think most backfields were expecting it to be 60-40, something like that, outside of the rare McCaffrey, Najee Harris type workloads that we see from time to time. But I don't think it's a 0% chance. It's greater than 0 that they draft a running back. Obviously, the later it comes, the better it is for ETN.
McBride, Miller, Charbonnet, Chase Brown, all mentioned by John Bonneville. Royal Slade, who has been whipping me in a number of these best ball drafts that we've been having. And by the way, I just checked that one, Mike. You did do the Tony Pollard, Najee Harris move there, so nicely done by you. But thinking maybe they need a bigger guy between the tackles, and maybe they do. We'll see how that goes. Talked about Allen Robinson. Let's look at the other side of that coin, the Los Angeles Rams. Matthew Stafford. I mean, I want to see it, with my own eyes, but let's say that he is healthy, or as healthy as they say, and he comes out and he's throwing in OTAs and everything's looking good. Will it change your view of any of these players involved, or are none of them really worthwhile other than Cooper Kupp?
That's the guy. That's the only thing I want. Matt Stafford, stay healthy to solidify the first-round value of Cooper Kupp. And I think as long as Stafford is healthy, he'll continue to, just absolutely destroy him with targets. I just pepper him with targets, right? But I don't really have any interest in drafting Matt Stafford. Now, look, I'm sure I might have a best ball roster with him on it, right? But I think in the back of your mind
right now,
right? But is the arm gonna it's worrisome? Okay.
I agree.
And beyond that, how good are the weapons? Now, the one argument you can make is, could this team be pretty bad? Could they be throwing quite a bit, right? I am interested in Cam Akers, the way he finished the season last year. But speaking strictly on the pass catchers, that's the hope I have, is that Stafford stays healthy. And if he does, I think we're going to get another top 5 type wide receiver season out of Cooper Kupp, and not investing in Stafford personally.
I'm not going to lie. I have Cooper Kupp as my wide receiver 1.
I know.
Will be drafted. I take him number 1 overall. And as many of you have heard on this live stream, I mean, I think Mike and I are both, heavy Travis Kelce investors in the first round, but I'm not going to shy away from Cooper Kupp either, especially if he slides down, as he has been, below Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Totally understandable, but I will remind you that one of those players, one of those three wide receivers, was outscoring the others on a weekly basis, and his name was Cooper Kupp before he was hurt, and that was with issues at quarterback. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm kind of with you. Rachaad White, we talked about Tampa Bay a little bit. Says he's ready to be a stud. Mike Dempsey, do you believe him? Are we, so let's say there are no major moves at running back there. How much trust do you have in Rachaad White? I think the price is right there as well. Are you investing in him heavily right now?
Yes. I don't think his ADP has jumped up enough, quite frankly, since there's been multiple instances now. Todd Bowles has referred to him as a 3-down back. He is talking about being a featured back. And look, do I believe that he believes that? Yeah, I do. Do I necessarily believe that? Hey, who cares? You talk about it all the time, Bob. It's about opportunities, about touches. Is a team that lost Tom Brady, and even with Tom Brady was just, sneaking into the postseason. They look like they're maybe taking a half step back this year. Is that the team? Is that the position you invest in when you're that far away from being a true Super Bowl contender? I think the Bucs have to figure out the quarterback position here. I could absolutely see a season of Rachaad White being the main guy. And even if he is not, even if they draft a guy in the third round and they split it, he's going inexpensively enough right now that I will take plenty. I've got him plenty as a running back 3. I don't have anything higher than a running back 3, but you can continually get him there. If you go running back heavy, you can even get him as a running back 4 still, even with this. So he is a guy I feel like the market hasn't adjusted quite enough on. And, the 8th round is kind of the sweet spot for him, and you don't always get him there anymore. So he's bumped up a little bit, but right. But occasionally he's lingering around, like the late 7th, and he's there. He stands out sometimes to me like a sore thumb among the available running backs. So yeah, I am investing in Rachaad White based on the circumstance.
I would agree with that. And the quarterback, by the way, a couple comments here. Stafford's so cheap, the most valuable to Cup drafter. Totally agree with that. Cup about to get 20 targets a game, says John Bonneville. I'll take it.
Let's go. Let's go.
Targets. And so the quarterback situation, you mentioned it, Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask competing. I want to take lessons from last year. One of the ones I took from last year is that maybe perceived lousy quarterback situations don't always translate to lousy production for wide receivers, according to the Seattle Seahawks. But it takes the quarterback to come through, right? Geno Smith did last year. Maybe Jared Goff, I think, is another example of, we're maybe, and I want to say Amari Cooper, we were kind of dialed back on, and I thought he performed pretty well given his situation. But I'm not as comfortable with, I want to extend this and I want to, take a chance this year. I don't want to take that chance with Evans and Godwin right now. It just doesn't feel right.
Well, look, they threw the ball as much as anybody last year with the guy named Tom Brady at the helm. And, Evans' touchdowns weren't where you wanted them to be. He's going to squeeze out 1,000 yards. I'm pretty confident in that. And I do hope that Baker Mayfield is the guy, Bob, because he's got a little bit of a gunslinger,
right?
Attitude towards him, which I think will help more with Evans, because Evans will win those contested balls. He'll take those shots down the field. But, do they reach a point where they go, hey, look, we're not going anywhere. Baker's a short-term guy. He's not the answer here. We got to see what we have in Kyle Trask. Or do they bring in another quarterback who's a rookie? It's not a great situation. But I will say this. Right now, Mike Evans has been falling so far in drafts that I probably am going to get back on that horse a little bit at some point. At a certain point, it becomes a bargain again,
I have done that for the reason I stated, just because I went into this offseason saying I'm not going to let myself be scared away by quarterback situations on good players. Right now, we're looking at Mike Evans as wide receiver 28 over the last 2.5 weeks. So pretty fresh draft numbers. Chris Godwin is going as wide receiver 31. I'm with you. I feel a little better about Evans myself, but But yeah, I think this is kind of a thing. We'll see what this quarterback situation is, and maybe they do something on the draft. By the way, there'll be draft coverage on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio next week, and Mike Dempsey and I will be part of it. So I'll be throwing that schedule out here over the coming days, and definitely we'll hit it hard on Saturday. But we'll be on next Monday, we'll be on next Thursday, we'll be on next Friday, we'll be on next Saturday, next Sunday, and the following Monday. You will be sick of Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey, I tell you that.
Yes.
Well, maybe you already are. I don't know. Chime in on the chat. If you're sick of Mike Harris and Bob Harris and Mike Dempsey, let me know right now. But we'll move on. In the meantime, I mentioned Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, coming off a stellar second year. He's saying, the Lions should be number one in any number of categories. We have Jameson Williams coming back, a change at running back. High expectations. Do we share in those?
Look, I think for the overall offense, yes. I think Amon-Ra's being overdrafted a little bit right now, though. You got Amon-Ra going in the top half of round 2. I'm not saying I don't have any shares of them. I have a handful, small smattering of them. But I do think Jameson Williams is a much better receiver than anything they've had across from him for the last 2 years. And I think he's going to elevate himself to being the number one in that offense. I think there'll be enough to go around to make Amon-Ra a very, more of a low-end 1, high-end 2, and maybe a little stronger there, maybe more solidified in PPR leagues. But I just feel I see him coming off the board as the 15th player, and I feel like there are enough guys there. I'd rather take a chance, and we're talking best ball, mostly drafts right now. I'd rather take a chance on the upside of a Jalen Waddle. But, let's say I get Tyreek Hill at pick 7, all right? And I come back in the middle of round 2, and I've got the explosive guy, and I want the guy who is going to give me a high catch total every week to balance things out. Then again, I could wait another full round, maybe even 2 more, and get Keenan Allen where he's going in that same role this year. So I like the player. Obviously, he can be productive. I think the circumstances have changed enough that he's not a value at the moment.
Right, but I do kind of like him as that. I'm getting him as a wide receiver too. If I go a 1 later in the first round, and I'm coming back around, and in drafts where I want to go wide receiver heavy, I love him as a 2, especially if you maybe get a Tyreek Hill or a kind of an up and down guy, maybe a little boom bust play. He seems like that. I feel like Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to turn into the new Keenan Allen. Maybe that's just me being wishful. Comment here: Lions basically getting 3 first-round picks this year with getting Jameson Williams back. I think that's a reasonable assumption there. I'm not going to argue with that. And I'm hoping he does great things, and he's still pretty cheap. So I'm on that. So we talked about the first-round picks, Mike, in general. And so level of confidence, you and I have drafted a fair amount. We all know we're drafting these players at their ceiling, right? I mean, that's the idea. So the confidence level of them hitting the ceiling. If I look at these, let's say the first 3 picks, Mike, Justin Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey, Jamar Chase, your levels of confidence in those 3 players?
About as high as it can be, right? I mean, proven track records. I think Chase is a phenomenal talent and didn't play the whole season last year, but certainly, I have no qualms with any of those guys. Doesn't mean I'll necessarily take them as my top 3. Sometimes I take Kelsey because I look at it for me, I don't want Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the same team if I can help it.
Right.
And oftentimes, let's say you have the 3rd pick. If you take Kelsey, you can get Higgins at the 210, or you can get him at 303 sometimes as your 1 or 2, and I'm okay with that. So I look to avoid getting Chase too much, but just in terms of the pure value, I'm on board with all 3 of those guys.
Next 3 in order, and I'll go ahead and speak for both of us. Travis Kelce at number 4 right now. I'm all in. I will draft him number 1 overall. I will draft him anywhere from 1 to. I'll draft him anywhere I can get him. I'm not drafting him exclusively. We've talked about this on previous live streams. If you have not seen, I have a pretty solid top 6, and if I get 6 first picks overall, I will rotate those first picks because Jonathan Taylor told me to last year. But Travis Kelce, Austin Eckler, and Tyreek Hill are 4, 5, and 6. Where are we at on those confidence levels?
Austin Eckler and Tyreek Hill. Look, obviously, I think the ideal is Austin Eckler stays with Los Angeles in an offense where he's fit like a glove, and he's already indicated he's not going to hold out. He's going to play 1 more year. Worst case scenario, I'm running it back with the Chargers. I'd mentioned that speculative trade to Philadelphia. Don't know a team. is Austin Eckler, are you going to take on an Austin Eckler and not be willing to give him a new money contract, knowing that that's what he's looking for? Maybe you would, if you feel like that's the final piece that could push you over the top, and Philadelphia might, in that regard, go that route for a one-year kind of stopgap and load up with their draft capital at other spots. So I'm okay with Eckler. I'm hoping, look, if I knew for a fact he's back in LA, he's probably a top 3 pick. So I think the fact that he indicates he's going to play this year, won't hold out, is enough for me to be comfortable with him in that next selection of 3, to be sure. And Tyreek Hill, yeah, I mean, what's not to like about Tyreek Hill, man? I mean, look, the quarterback situation, too, was in and out of the lineup last year. Tyreek Hill, although the touchdowns aren't there without Tua, the overall numbers have been fantastic. They do have Mike White in place now on a 2-year, $16 million deal, right. And I think that gives me more confidence in both Hill and Jalen Waddle. So, I think all 3 of those guys are very reasonable at that spot. I know you haven't mentioned your guy Cooper Kupp yet, so I have a feeling he's coming right now.
I'm about to mention him now. And by the way, I think, Tyreek Hill certainly paid off last year, and I'm expecting better things at quarterback. So let's get to the guys that we have not talked about yet. 7, 8, and 9, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, and Devontae Adams, 3 wide receivers.
Yeah, I think you get into dealer's choice here a little bit. Like Kupp, for sure, I would take at that spot. And there's no question about it. The more good reports we hear on Stafford, I mean, I think Kupp probably should be 2 or 3 spots higher, honestly. The other guys are curious. Like, if I know Stephon Diggs is going to be locked and loaded in that offense, then yeah, he's probably worth that spot, right? And I think that's the likely outcome here. I don't think there's a high risk of that not being the case. Devontae, yeah, he's getting a little bit older. Will it be Garoppolo? Will Garoppolo force feed him the ball? Will they try to draft a quarterback at 7? If they do, at what point? Let's say they get Anthony Richardson, Bob. I mean, for all the talent Devontae Adams has, he's still got to have a guy that can hit him consistently, even with all those targets. And, one thing that Anthony Richardson struggled with sometimes was missing wide open guys collegiately. Now, can you get better? Absolutely. So I think there's a little bit more risk. Like when I say dealer's choice, you're now down in the range where you could take an A.J. Brown or a CeeDee Lamb and feel good about those guys equally or in that range. Or maybe this is where you say, you know what, let me get Saquon Barkley or Jonathan Taylor if I feel good about them, because one of the guys I just mentioned is likely to be there for you on the way back in round 2.
And let's go round this up. 10, Jonathan Taylor. 11, CeeDee Lamb has moved up. Saquon Barkley is 12. I had mentioned Josh Allen was 11 before. I factored this in now, so it was like a little narrower sample size. So Josh Allen sliding a little bit. But Jonathan Taylor, CeeDee Lamb, Saquon Barkley, high comfort levels?
Yeah, I think they're reasonably logical players to take there. I have a lot of confidence in CeeDee Lamb at this point in time. The A.J. Brown thing, you can make I'm going to pass on A.J. Brown because I like Devontae Smith. Well, you're not going to get him, right? If you are in position to get one or the other, because A.J. Brown is going near the end of the first into the early part of the second, whereas Devontae Smith is coming off the board at the end of the second into the early part of the third. And it's just, he's not going to make it back to you. Like, if you pass right. A.J. Brown twice, he's not going to make it back. So, it's a matter of what your initial startup draft position was, whether or not I'm giving any shares to A.J. Brown. And are you looking to do the quarterback hookup? Like, you get A.J. Brown at 11, come back with Jalen Hurts. I know that's early for a lot of people, but you're seeing that happen in a few drafts right now. I do like taking CD. Like, I've got some of that Dallas stack that just falls to you naturally. You get a late first-round pick. Yeah. Maybe you get CD at the 202, Bob. Then you can get Tony Pollard at the 311 or the 402, and you can get Dak several rounds later, and I kind of like that approach, if you're going for the stack. But I think, a handful of other players, and if the quarterbacks are in the mix, they're going to push some of these guys down. But honestly, I don't know another running back. Like, I'm not comfortable taking Bijan without knowing his landing spot and what his likely workload is going to be. Am I going to miss out? Maybe so. Maybe so on a few. I'm not down with Breece Hall coming off a torn ACL at that price range right now. So I think those are the safest guys at the running back spot that you mentioned there. And I think the first round is honestly pretty solid. I don't feel like there's a guy that I'm consciously trying to avoid. I'm probably saturated right now on Stephon Diggs if anybody, at his current price.
4 running backs in that first round. This is a change from years past, and one I think you'll expect to see each. 1 tight end, the rest wide receivers. You mentioned Bijan Robinson, so we'll jump into the rookies. As I go into that second round, I'll just go ahead and read off the number. 13, A.J. Brown. Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes are going 14 and 15 right now. Amon-Ra, Derrick Henry. Then Bijan Robinson at 18, just ahead of Jalen Hurts. So let's talk a little bit about rookies. And like I've always been, kind of reluctant to invest in the rookies in the past. I just feel like I can go other paths. I'm trying to break myself of that habit, especially at wide receiver. But I think Bijan, once we know the landing spot, this seems like it'll probably be the right price. But do you think he'll rise up into the first round if he lands in a good spot?
Yes, I think he will. People like the new thing, the hot thing, the fresh legs, whatever you want to say, if he lands in an ideal spot. By the way, let me just mention Derrick Henry at that price. You want to talk about a guy whose price fluctuates, okay? I got him early third. I've gotten him late third. I wouldn't take him. You don't need to take – if you're playing in enough leagues, you don't have to take Derrick Henry that high, because in a fair percentage of them, you're going to get a much better price on Derrick Henry. But I think if you do go there, I totally understand. I think he's got one more workhorse year left in him, provided he stays in Nashville. But again, everything's on the table right now, Bob. If Tennessee finds himself resetting at the quarterback position, could they trade Derrick Henry to a contender where he might not get that 300 carry plus 30 plus reception workload? I think that's possible as well. So there are a lot of unknowns as we sit here 8 days out from the NFL draft.
I feel like Bijan, John Bonneville mentions Bijan with the Eagles and fantasy community would lose their minds. And Bijan anywhere in the fantasy community is going to lose their minds. He's one of those guys. The rest of the top range of running backs, Mike, I've invested some in Jahmyr Gibbs. I just got him in a Superflex Dynasty at 106 after I had a 105 as well. And I got Smith and Jigba in there. So are you interested in any right now, or is this simply wait until they get a helmet on?
I'm not getting him because others are more interested in him. Like, I'm not opposed to drafting rookie running backs, but when the price is as steep as it is on those two guys, then I'm just going to wait. And, if I miss out, so be it. I miss out. Dynasty is a different story, obviously. You got to take your shots. And by the way, that's a whole other thing, why anyone would have a dynasty rookie draft this close to the NFL draft and not wait, but that's a personal preference for me. So honestly, I have not gotten into this rookie class a ton this year, because I feel like you get into double-digit rounds and it's a total crapshoot, right? I mean, landing spot, like if Isaiah Pacheco doesn't land in Kansas City last year, who knows what his value is? Or maybe it's even greater somewhere else. It just hasn't been that year. There are enough guys, like for me, when I'm looking at my fifth running back, I'm getting a lot of Cordero Patterson, I'm getting Devin Singletary, guys like that I'm just a little bit more comfortable with, that I can at least, now that could get changed too if Atlanta drafts a rookie running back, for instance. It could skew things, and I'm expecting Patterson to be a compliment to Algier this year. But again, we're talking best ball. So I guess the bottom line, I love the talent of some of these guys. I've been more hesitant this year to take shots on them, waiting to see what the landing spots are than in most recent years.
Yeah, I'll probably do that. I've drafted a little bit more this year in advance, and I am in a league, and I know we had a question, so I'm just going to answer it real quick about a Superflex. Who are the top 5 picks? Well, I just did a Superflex, and so I'll tell you who the top 5 picks in this draft were, and it seems like pretty normal in some of the mocks I've been in. Bijan Robinson, 1 overall, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith and Jigba. That was the top 5. I think that's what you'll see in a lot of drafts. So whatever the order is, Bijan going first, the quarterbacks in the order people like them. Just, Mike, quickly on the rookie quarterbacks, on those 3 rookie quarterbacks, I think people view Bryce Young as maybe a little bit small, but boy, he's a fantastic player. Richardson, raw and inexperienced, but huge athleticism. CJ Stroud seems to be losing steam a little bit. Just how do you rank those 3?
I think, if you want the safest guy is likely to be a starter 3 or 4 years from now, it is Bryce Young. But, if you want the home run, it's potentially Anthony Richardson. You got to gamble sometimes on the upside of these players. He doesn't come in, he could be another Cam Newton type, but Cam Newton was a Heisman Trophy winner, phenomenal passer in his final year at Auburn as well, came in and set the rookie passing record. Anthony Richardson is not going to do that. Clearly the ceiling is high, but Bob, look, there's so much talk in draft circles right now that Will Levis could be the second overall pick. And if he is, you have to honor, at least to some degree, the NFL team's investment in these players. That the Twitter draft community thinks they know more than everybody. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And I don't like Will Levis particularly, but if he goes to Indianapolis, for instance, where they have a pretty good offensive line, they got Jonathan Taylor to take some pressure off, and Michael Pittman Jr. to at least start off that wide receiver core. I mean, I could certainly see him being the play over Jackson Smith and Jigba in a super flex. But I think mostly you're going to see Bryce Young go ahead of Richardson. Richardson will be 2 because the upside is so great. That people will feel that Young is the safest thing. And if that's what you want, and if you just want a guy who's likely to have job security for the most number of years, he will be it. But I think those are the 2. After that, I don't know what to make of the NFL. Are they really souring on C.J. Stroud, or is it one team in particular, the Houston Texans, that are? Are they making the right decision here? I don't know. I like Stroud. He has a lot of attributes. I don't think he's ever going to be one of the elite running quarterbacks, even though he showed he could do that to some degree against Georgia in the college football playoff. So I think the order they came off is correct, but I do think depending on what happens, 8 days from today, Will Levis can really crash his party in a big way, particularly if Richardson and or Stroud take a longer than expected fall.
A few final comments here. Levis is getting the Zach Wilson treatment, says Mr. Scampers to him, and that kind of makes sense as well. John Bonneville, Hawkinson is going to be the new Kelsey. I agree with that, and the way too many shares I have of Hawkinson already, hopefully that comes true. Also, all the people, if we took a poll, it would be 100%. It would be unanimous. Never enough Harrison Dempsey. So that being the case. That being the case, I'll just note Saturday night, 7 p.m., we'll be on the SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio doing our regular show. Then Monday from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m., we'll be doing a pre-draft special on draft. When the draft starts on Thursday, it'll be Mike Dempsey, Jeff Ratcliffe, John Hansen, myself, and Jeff Mans from 8 until midnight. And then on Friday, 7 to 11, it'll be Dempsey, Ratcliffe, Hansen, and Mans doing the draft coverage. I'll be solo from 11 to midnight doing a draft wrap-up. And then on Saturday, 4 to 7 p.m., it'll be me and Dempsey doing our thing, covering the draft as it wraps up. Then Sunday, Dempsey and I will host the post-draft draft with all the hosts coming in. Then again, Monday, on the 1st, we'll be doing another 10 to midnight kind of a wrap-up thing. So there'll be no shortage of us. So those of you who voted can't get enough of us, you cannot. You might want to. We might test that a little bit. Mike, I want to thank you very much. You're a fantastic guest, almost as good a guest as you are a host.
That's the first time Bob said something nice to me in the last 10 years. But thank you for having me on, Robert. And I will be talking to you a lot, apparently, in the next couple weeks and hopefully for many more years to come. So thanks to everybody who took time out to watch this. And good luck in all your drafts right now, unless I'm in it, too, because I want to win, too.
All right, everybody. Thanks. That'll be it for this. Tonight, I'll be back Saturday at noon Eastern time with Tara Roberts, from Dynasty Vipers and all the many sites, including Football Diehards, that she contributes to. So come back for that and then tune into the Football Diehards on Saturday night at 7 p.m. And go to this website I keep talking about. It's the Football Diehards.
Oh,
it's really good.
New one, right? It's new.
Use the program Diehards. Yes, good stuff from John Laub there, amongst others. So thanks, everyone, for coming. We'll see you next